the first session was about scaling smarter, this conversation is about securing smarter. The ransomwares are becoming more intelligent by using AI as a technology.
Availability is the question which most of the customers are worried about.
How can each of these enterprises be more smarter?
Point is about cyber resilience. So what is cyber resilience?
Is there a solution that if they are attacking us with AI, can AI protect us?
First line of defense, to simply put it, could be PowerStore, which actually helps you to create immutable copies of your data.
How some of these organizations can make themselves ready against some of these attacks?
Every call from the agent to the system is evaluated. Use AI to harden cyber defense and recovery.
Welcome back to the TechCircle podcast. If the first session was about scaling smarter, this conversation is about securing smarter. Ransomware attack, or I would say ransomware damages around $52 billion globally in 2025. And India is not far away in that number as well. The story here is that the ransomwares are becoming more intelligent by using AI as a technology. They are becoming more aggressive. They are becoming more intelligent, I would say, and they are getting more distributed across different regions. So it's becoming harder to track eventually for an organization how the threat and the attack is happening. The question today is, in this environment, how can each of these enterprises be more smarter in identifying how can they protect themselves? For that conversation, we are joined by Vinod once again. Vinod, thank you so much for your participation. The question is, Vinod, when we look at the ransomware, the threat, right? Uh, Organizations are not that ready, as we say, and the threats are continuously evolving. When we look at, uh, we are using AI to what you call protect to build something. They are using AI to get into our systems, whether it is through, say, Gen AI, through agentic AI. So they're exploiting, right, these technologies. How some of these organizations can make themselves ready to what you call against some of these attacks?
Let me start with your statement where you said data is the new oil, actually. So at the end of the day, it is about protecting the data that you have. And that is where the world is moving towards, right? Now, so therefore, in the case of ransomware attack, what has happened is availability is the question which most of the customers are worried about. They are worried about the security, but ransomware has resulted in availability becoming very, very important, right? Although there are a lot of these perimeter solutions which have been put in place, but you still have ransomware getting through into the enterprises. Okay, so our experience is the customers are wanting to ensure that they're not only secure but also they are able to get up and back up and sort of run. That's something which is very, very important for them at the moment. And what has happened is that the if you look at the question of traditional backup, what is traditional backup? Traditional backup is primarily, the question is, can I restore my copy of the data? That's basically a traditional backup. And today, when we talk about ransomware attacks and AI getting in place, the whole point is about cyber resilience. So what is cyber resilience? Cyber resilience is, we are trying to, in the context of availability, is how do we, can I know if the data is corrupted, right? Do I have clean copies with me? Can I get my apps up and running, quickly? So that's the question which actually comes up. If you see the evolution of the AI and the data, it's been there for a long time. The the change which has happened is the intelligence in terms of ransomware attacks. Like you mentioned about agentic AIs, agents being used, Instead of having scripted attacks, today you have planned attacks which are automatic, which you know chooses each and every phase of the kill chain of a ransomware. Right. So it's more intelligence which has been built in to ensure that you have ransomware. The results of the attackers. So the question is that how do we the to answer the customers' issues today in terms of how do we get the quickly you ensure that your app starts running quickly. That is something which is the most important part, right? So the whole topic around zero trust alignment or zero trust is something which is the most important part, which is basically never trust, always verify. So you have products and solutions from companies like ours, especially in terms of for data storage, for protection of your data. What basically they do is to create immutable copies. Okay, that is number one. Number two is give strong access controls, to your data. Then anomaly detection. If there's any anomaly in the data, we got to detect those anomalies, why they have happened. Isolated recovery vaults. How do you recover from vaults which are not part of the system or data vaults primarily? Okay. So these are the zero trust alignments which have to be there in the storage devices as well as your the recovery solutions that you have or cyber resilience solutions that we are talking about. Now this is where the Dell's combination of PowerStore, which is this primary storage that we are talking about, and the product called PowerProtect, along with storage direct protection. Okay, so these are the three products which combinedly give you that solution that we are talking about in terms of the complete help you to protect the enterprises from the ransomware attacks.
Correct. So attackers are, like I said, they're becoming more logical, more invasive. Is there a solution that if they are attacking us with AI, can AI protect us? Is that a will that be a right point to be made, or is it something which probably it is still far away? It can only be used to threaten somebody, or used as, say, to for a ransomware.
So the products that we spoke about in terms of storage and cyber resiliency product, that I spoke about, Power Protect, right, and the storage direct protection. Okay. Now these products actually have AI built in. For example, in the case of let's say the PowerStore, the product where the data is stored, right? So there is something called automatic threat hunting. Okay, so what it basically does is that it tries to figure out if there's any ransomware which has gone into that particular data. So ransomware detection happens. Okay, that is where it is. So you have something called snapshots, which PowerStore takes, which is basically data snapshots. So it actually hunts if any ransomware has gone into that particular data, right? And that is the first part of the story. The second is so in the case of PowerStore, so it has got an automatic threat hunting, solution, or it basically tries to detect if there's any ransomware, using AI. So what it does is it checks on approximately 7,500 ransomware variants in the product, in the data which you have. We call it snapshots, which you have taken in PowerStore. Okay, so it actually checks if there's any infection or anything of that kind which has happened in that particular data. Okay, so that's one. Now what happens is that the outcome of all this is, which are the volumes or which are the places where the data has, where the ransomware has gone. So that's basically identifies it. I just trying to answer the question that how does PowerStore take care of the ransomware? How does it take care of the ransomware? So it uses the AI aspect to figure that out. Okay.
I also wanted to understand from you what are some of the capabilities other than what you have just mentioned. If you can highlight one or two more capabilities of PowerStore, which in turns helps, or which is different from the other industry solutions. Anything unique within that particular piece when you talked about the number of the count of parameters it considers? Uh, your thoughts on that? Any other feature which is very unique in it?
Yeah, because we began with ransomware, so we need to look at the solution in totality. One is that you have a storage product like PowerStore, and then also how do you sort of have a protection on that. So the second product is in terms of data protection, which is what we mentioned about PowerStore data protection. And if you remember, I mentioned about the product called storage direct protection, which is what you know. So all of them put together. So we have to see in the complete context how are we trying to ensure that we have a cyber resilient platform which helps you to recover your data. Okay, so that's one thing. Now the first thing is in terms of the all the products have to go together. Okay, so the second part which I mentioned about the data protection, what is important is in terms of the anomaly detection. Okay, so how are we able to figure out if there's an anomaly in the data which has gone into the protection solution, which is right. No, that is one. So what happens is your first line of defense, to simply put it, could be PowerStore, where your data is stored, right? And then you have a power data protection solution which is there with you, which is called PowerProtect from Dell. Okay, and then you have a product called Storage Direct Protection, which is a product which connects both of them together. So from PowerProtect, it goes into from PowerStore, it goes into PowerProtect, right? And the one which it takes it through is called Storage Direct Protection, right? So in PowerStore, like I mentioned to you about some of the features, right? In the PowerProtect, you basically you have something called anomaly detection, which ensures that detection is taken care of.
I think that's a full bucket of protection which you have on the storage.
So what happens is in the case of PowerProtect, you have immutable data copies. That is one. Third part is in terms of cyber vaults, right? So, and then of course orchestration of all this put together. So these two products, PowerStore, which actually helps you to create immutable copies of your data. Okay, that is first part. It encrypts. It gives you role-based access controls and cyber resilience features. That is what PowerStore is all about. Then you have a PowerProtect, which is the one which is helping you to have cyber resilient data protection solution, which actually helps you with immutable copies of your data. It helps you to create a cyber vault. Okay, then what it does is helps you in anomaly detection.
So like I said,
Okay,
it's a
so
full
and
package.
yeah, so it is not about, it is about how do we, the issue is the, despite having so many perimeter solutions, still we have ransomware attacks which where the attacker is primarily concerned about picking up your data. So you need to have the complete integrated solution or complete thing together to protect your data. That is how it can be.
Absolutely. So that brings back to the point what I mentioned earlier, right? They attack on they know where they're attacking, in terms of how distributed the data is, right? How fragmented it is, and which are those areas where we are still using a very traditional kind of a protection layer, right? So with AI, they are able to find out all these loopholes, and I think the solution beautifully pitches in, sits on top of that, and it protects everything from all the sides. Understood. My next question is something what is very very close to this world currently, and everybody is using that word very frequently, which is zero trust. Right now, when you look at zero trust as a technology, right, and you embed AI into the layer of or into the architecture, uh, how future proofing that becomes for an organization when you combine zero trust plus AI.
So the zero trust architecture is primarily you, it basically is that never trust, always verify, right? So that's where it is. So the agents that you have that you have deployed, you don't trust those agents. You always verify the activities that they do. Okay, that is where the architecture starts with. That's the base foundation. So every call from the agent to the system is evaluated. Okay, that is the first part of the story. And then you don't give them enough surface. So you have a control in terms of their activities, in terms of the calls into the system, which helps you to make sure that you have an upper hand over the agents that you have deployed in your system, in your enterprise, or in your AI ecosystem. That's what you do. Right. So basically keeping a tab and a control on all the activities, keep, observing what are they doing, because of the ransomware attacks, because of the intelligence which the other side is also building, is exactly trying to figure out how do they go into key important data, etc., to ensure that they are able to get your data out, or to, yeah, that's what it is.
Moving on to my last segment, and before we wrap up, if I give you a magic wand, right, and you want to put a solution for the AI distributed workloads, uh, how would you go about building up that distribution stack? How would it look like from a future perspective, obviously? But obviously, keeping in mind that we are talking about the distributed workloads with AI.
First thing is establish an AI aware architecture, distributed architecture. That's the point number one. Protect AI data pipelines end to end. That's the second thing that one has to do. Use AI to harden cyber defense and recovery. That's point number three. Okay, operationalize cyber recovery for AI workloads. Okay, so these are the 4 points that one could look into from the perspective of AI.
So, viewers, resiliency isn't one-time activity; it's a continuous inflow. With this conversation, we try to bring out what some of those tools and solutions can help you enable that kind of an resilient architecture to protect your organization from the growing ransomware attack or cyber attacks, uh, which are driven largely on the back of AI. And now, as we progress into the world of agentic AI, those are paving their ways through them, through that technology as well. Thank you so much, Vinod, for sharing us your thoughts on this interesting topic. Thank you so much. My name is Manish. Till next time, thank you.